Hello, and welcome to episode 94. No, this is 99. What am I doing? It's 99, Tory. Incredible. Welcome to episode 99 of Webflow. I'm your host, Jack, your failure connoisseur, and today my guest is Tory Howell. She's a design leader with 9 years' experience in product design and marketing design for organizations that make the world a better place. Now, she has got extensive design experience. In fact, in 2014, she was a design editor as a student, and since then she's had various different jobs as graphic design assistant, counter attendant. That's actually not design related. She did product design. She's had all sorts of different experience, and now she is the co-creator of Doorway Creative, and she's been working there for 2 years. It's a 2-year-old agency. It's a baby, but it's
We're a
growing.
baby.
We're a baby, but a precious baby nonetheless. These
Truly.
guys do these guys do strategies, brands, and websites for purpose-driven organizations. They are on a mission to empower companies that are creating change for the world. They've worked with foster care companies, legal action networks, donation companies, overdose detection organizations, and so many more. So you go check out their website that's in the show notes below. So they're riding high. But has it been easy? Of course not. The failures that we're going to talk about today are spending time and money creating a service that no one wanted, giving a freelancer the wrong job for them, and business partner communication breakdown and conflict. Juicy episode ahead. Tory, welcome to the Webflow podcast.
What's up, Jack? I am so stoked to be here. I love the way you approach failure. And so I'm just really, really grateful to be here with you and with everybody who's listening.
I am stoked indeed. Not a phrase I often say, I've got to be honest, but I am stoked to the gunnels. Definitely, you can't say that, can you? I'm going to stop talking. Tell me about your relationship with failure.
Yeah. Wow. This is a really good question. I am super lucky to have been raised by people who had very different relationship to failure than I think a lot of other folks did. When I was younger, my parents always told me that it was the effort that I put into things, not the outcome that mattered. So when I got a D on a test in math, because I am not a math person, I was going to 0-hour math, I was getting tutoring, got a D on my math test, and my mom just asked, "Did you do your best?" And I said yes. And she goes, "Then that's all we want." It was totally okay. It didn't matter whether I got an A or a D. It was just if I did my best. And then as I started to get a little bit older, I started playing a ton of sports. I did volleyball, basketball, I ran cross country, I fenced for a little bit, I did ballet, I was in choir, I did all of this stuff, and I was not good at any of it. I probably scored a total of 5 points across all of my sports. I had no business singing in front of people, but the sort of spirit in my house with my family was always just try it, see how you feel. It's an experiment. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. It's not whether you are like quote unquote good at something or not. So today I just see all of my actions as experiments, and sometimes those experiments work and sometimes they don't. I need to change my hypothesis. I need to change my methods. I need to change my expectations, but I try to see things as an experiment and less as like this kind of binary good or bad, failure or success kind of situation.
That sounds so healthy and really empowering of your mum to be just like, you know what, try your best. That's all you can do. And it doesn't really matter the kind of final grade. Because I think we are taught from a very young age at school, it's like A's good, B's bad, C's worse. It's like you want to be an A student.
Yeah.
And I don't know about your school, but I remember there was like a lot of leaderboards, and it was just like, if you're not at the top, then you need to strive to be the top of the pile type thing. And then how that relates to, what we see success as today of like, a lot of people might say, well, success is having a lot of money, and that might be the end of their success metric. And, it's a really interesting thing to discuss, like how we see success and failure as an adult, or our relationship with success and failure as adults from, our upbringing and how we've been told we're basically, we're proud of you, or you haven't done enough in our eyes as parents. So it's really, really healthy. It sounds like that your mum said that to you.
Yeah, and especially you are talking about the education system. A lot of times I think it's hard, especially for younger people, to sort of separate their grades from who they feel they are as a person. And it's like an A means something about me, or a D or an F means something about me, not, there's all these other circumstances that came into play that affected my ability to do well in this material. And maybe sometimes it's just that you need more support that you weren't given, and that has nothing to do with who you are as a person. It has to do with the support system around you.
And I think how that relates to what, as a freelancer or, working in an agency, when someone says, hey, this creative work, I don't like it. And you associate emotionally, them saying, I don't like the work, to I don't like you, or like you're not enough, or you're not good at your job. You're not good at the creative. You haven't delivered what I've asked you to deliver. When creative work, the difference between someone saying like, I want something fun, playful, but authoritative and trustworthy in your eyes is one visual, but then they're like, well, that doesn't match my, image in my mind of what I wanted. And then, there's this whole, mix of emotions when you attach your self-worth to, your client's appreciation of your work. And that's a slippery slope. I mean, sorry, that wasn't really a question, was it? It was just me telling you what I think. I was riffing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. And like, I really wish, like I've thought about this for a while, I really wish that there was some kind of curriculum in either, high school, elementary school level, or even I am also a teacher at the college level for designers. Really wish there was a curriculum dedicated towards teaching people how to interpret feedback and then respond to feedback, and how to like have those dialogues about the work, and not about, like, again, it's not about you. Like if you come to me and you're like, hey, Tori, you made this thing for me, but it's not hitting the mark, I can say, okay, great. That means that we had a misunderstanding. Let's get on the same page. Let's realign with each other. You're not coming to me and saying, oh, Tori, you suck. That's not what that means. But it's really hard to learn that. It is so hard to learn that. I don't think there's anything, at least that I've seen, that helps people learn that skill over time.
Yeah, this really relates to this bizarre video that I saw of Gordon Ramsay, the scary English chef, that apparently look quite similar. I think it's because of my forehead. I've got a lot of like lines in my forehead. But anyway,
maybe a little bit of the spook
please,
from when he was younger.
Well, let's not say you agree with that too closely. But anyway, he basically said you've got to separate the personal from business. Like if I say your food is terrible, he's talking about the food rather than you are terrible, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not to affect the relationship that you have as friends, or, boss to employee, or whatever it is. He's trying to make you cook better in his eyes to actually maintain the standard of the restaurant so that, business is great or whatever. And I think vice versa, it's quite strange when you're a new Webflower working for an agency and they say, this is not good enough. Here's why. As long as they explain why, otherwise it's really confusing. It's just like, oh, okay, why is that? But, if it's like objective, okay, you haven't checked the responsiveness on different breakpoints, this is broken, this isn't working. It can feel crushing because you're just sat there like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit. Like, what am I doing with my life? I'm no good, This person hates me. And actually, it's not personal, it's business. And I think that's quite a healthy way to kind of separate the subjective from the objective.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, for me, in the stage that I'm in, being the co-founder of an agency, I don't have somebody over me who's more experienced, like pointing out what I'm doing wrong. And to be honest, now that I'm in this place, I really miss that a lot. I really miss getting that feedback from people that helped push me to be better. I think that dynamic really relies on the sort of other person who's giving the feedback also knowing how to give feedback well. So that's another piece, is not just receiving feedback well, but how to give feedback well in a way that's actionable and is sort of framed as how can we learn and be better, and not why didn't you do it this way? Because especially when we're talking about younger designers, and this sort of relates to one of the failures we'll talk about later, as somebody who's giving feedback, you want to sort of see that this person is learning, and you get to be in this like magical position of helping them to learn. And so that can be really cool, but that can also be really not go so well, as if both people aren't ready for that.
Yeah, so I guess it's less about being like accusatory and more about like helping them understand why what they've done isn't at the level that you expect for whatever reason. Speaking of, you have, as we mentioned in the intro, 9 years experience in product design and marketing design for organizations that make the world a better place. Can you tell me why you want to do creative work for organizations that, want to make the world a better place, and how all of these different jobs, turned into Doorway Creative?
Yeah, definitely. So as a kid, I was always really creative. I was really interested in art. I had a ton of paint. I had easel in my room. I loved making things. I loved my art classes. But I was also coming of age during the 2008 financial crisis in the United States. My dad lost his job for a really long time. I had to start working really, really young to contribute to my family. And so I sort of grew up with this, this pivotal point when I was young. I grew up with this idea that I can't be a practicing artist. I have to have a job that will give me some kind of financial stability. And when it came to high school time, I had an art teacher, Miss Mosquitis. She is the best. She was a designer before she became a teacher, and she really saw my interest in creative practices, and she was tapped to design the yearbook for our school. And so she asked me to help her, and I learned a lot about InDesign, layout design, how to work with printers and things like that. And she was the one that introduced the field of design to me. I had no idea that it existed before I met her. So I was like, yes, this is the thing. This is how I can be creative, but also, have a little bit more financial stability in the long term. So I went to design school at ASU, Arizona State University, Arizona. And through that process, towards the end of our final year, our senior year, we had to do a final project, and that project had to be on a social issue, and I chose addiction. I have been loved and have loved many people who use drugs. Drugs have been kind of in my life in various capacities growing up. And so I felt very frustrated by the way the world treats people who use drugs. I've always seen people who use drugs, the people that I knew in my life, as people that I loved, people that deserve compassion and care, that deserve access to healthcare and resources to help them be healthy and live good lives. But the way that we treat people who use drugs kind of in our culture, specifically in the US, is really with a lot of shame, and we isolate people, we tear them away from their communities. As I was working on this project, I was really looking to find resources that thought about addiction and drug use in a different way. And I met my pal, Haley Coles, and she introduced me to the idea of harm reduction. Harm reduction is a social movement that recognizes the fact that drugs have always been part of the world. They will continue to be part of the world. And we should do our best to help people live healthy and full lives and not focus as much on abstinence. When we focus on abstinence, we tear people away from their communities. So that sort of shifted a lot for me, and I became very involved in the harm reduction movement. I spent a lot of time in organizations, and at the same time, I'm in design school. I'm becoming a designer. I eventually graduate from design school, and I go to work as an intern at an agency. And so I kind of have these two parallel tracks going in my life where I'm very invested in the harm reduction movement, and I'm also kind of coming into my own as a designer. And those things just sort of fell into place together. People in nonprofits and organizations need websites, they need design. I was a person in the movement who had those skills. And so I started getting a lot of clients from that space. And really that was my love while I was in the agency, and kind of climbing that ladder, if you will, becoming product designer, eventually the director of design. I was also had this book of freelance business on the side that was the work I really, really wanted to do. Around maybe 2019, the end of 2019, at the agency, we landed my dream project, which was with the National Harm Reduction Coalition. And so it was these two things fully came together. My harm reduction freelance side and my agency work really came together in the same place. And I started working with somebody at the agency. Her name is Triniti Burton. She was a brand strategist and a marketer. And through that project, we really fell in love with each other's work, with how we each saw the world. There's a lot of alignment in that. And so we just really jived well with each other. Of course, the pandemic hit, and a lot of people at the agency lost their job. We lost a huge book of business, and we had to pivot the agency to becoming a social media agency because that was, it was the pandemic, and the whole focus was things moving online. So Trinity and I helped the agency pivot, but that wasn't work that we wanted to do in the long term. And so we both ended up leaving the agency. Maybe a year later, we met, we had breakfast, and we were like, why don't we keep working together? And so we formed Doorway Creative. We both wanted to keep doing that work. I really loved that harm reduction side, working with those organizations to do design and web development. Trinity said she's a writer, she's a brand strategist. We have really complementary skill sets. And she also cares a lot about making the world a better place, doing work that has this kind of larger purpose to it. And so there's just so much alignment there. And yeah, we founded Doorway Creative, and that was about 2 years ago, and we're riding that wave.
Wow. Okay. Hell of a journey. So you had...
That was a lot. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, we went in there. That was amazing. Okay. So it sounds like you've obviously kind of had a real interest in social issues from, your relationship with people that, had problems with addiction, and that kind of led you into that type of work naturally. And you obviously had an interest in art, and then you were like, okay, maybe design would be a better way of kind of the problem solving aspect of creative work so that, you can have a sustainable career. Do you ever miss, or do you ever fantasize about being an artist though? Because a lot of the time people kind of go into tangential creative things, but really the thing that they love is maybe not like the thing that they're actually doing as much as like they're tapping into their creativity, but actually the real medium that they want to work in is perceived by society, or maybe, upbringing or whatever. They don't actually pursue that as a job, or don't see that as a job that they can do. Do you ever wonder about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't now. I think I did earlier on in my career. I vividly remember a point when I was an intern sitting at my desk making 100 LinkedIn banners for this like big book of business that we had at the agency, thinking, am I going to be doing this for the rest of my life? This seems terrible. But as time has gone on, I have really fallen in love with the problem solving aspect of design. I love it so much when my clients come to me and they say, hey, I have this problem in my organization, or our organization needs this tool. Can you build it for us? And I get to say, okay, yes, let's figure out what that tool needs to be. Let's figure out what it needs to do. Talk to me about the problems you're having in your organization, and I can figure out how to solve those with tech and with design and with marketing. So I have gone in that direction. And ultimately, I think it's a way better fit for me and the way my brain works. I don't know that I would have been as happy as I am now, having gone down the path of being a full-time practicing artist.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you've kind of settled with that. That sounds really healthy to be like, what I am doing, what I really want to be doing. Because I think sometimes that can be like a tension that might last for years otherwise. So now you're at, obviously, Doorway Creative. You started this after pandemic, and, the typical kind of clients you get, I guess, have come from you and Trinity actually working in that sector. You already have that kind of contact network. And as a result, you can kind of specialize in that area because you are already specialists in that area. Have I interpreted that correctly?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it could be easy to look at Doorway and say, oh, Doorway's been around for 2 years and already has all these clients. But really, those relationships with those clients are years and years in the making. From my time freelancing, Trinity's experience, like with the way that she is able to, she has this like really incredible, like magical ability to get on a very first call with a client and just build rapport with them within seconds. And that has been her whole career has honed that. And so it's been a lot of time that we've spent, in our sort of individual areas, our individual skill sets that have allowed us to do that as Doorway.
That's awesome. I just think that's really important to note, because a lot of the time, Webflowers might be like, okay, I'm going to niche down to work with SaaS websites or whatever, like SaaS companies, and they know nothing about that sector. They're just like, who's got a lot of money? And it's like, I just think that's quite an important thing to note, because, to a certain extent, you can choose a niche, but I also think it's interesting to think that the niche chooses you to a certain, like your network, your contacts are kind of the people that are actually going to pay you to do the creative work, and the people that know you, who have problems that you are uniquely, relevant to solve, is because of your experience. And like you and Trinity obviously have like a real depth of skill set, knowledge, understanding, empathy. You get how these people talk. You know their problems better than anyone. Like, it completely makes sense for you guys to go into that quite specialist area. I just think that's useful to kind of point out at this stage, where a lot of the time, I think, Webflowers might be like, who's got money? I'm going to niche there. And I'm not sure that's always necessarily a great or anything that's going to convince those people to actually like work with you. So just think it's interesting to know.
Totally. This, I think it's really important to like be a whole person outside of the work that you're doing. Like all of this work came through being introduced to somebody who kind of showed me this whole movement that I was going to be a part of, whether or not I was doing design work for them. And so like care about your interests, be a whole person, have hobbies, do other things that are not related to your work. There's people that need Webflow websites everywhere in every industry. You can find things that you care about, and then you get to like do work for those people too.
100%. I love that advice. Yeah. I think it's just good to, because ultimately the more people you actually just talk to doing whatever you do in your daily life, the more people that could potentially become, part of your client network, if hypothetically that's, a good fit for you and them. But I just think, it's sometimes problematic to just choose a niche that, has loads of money and you don't actually think about like why you are uniquely valuable to actually solve problems for this set of people. Like, have you got your own SaaS product? Like, if that is you, then okay, that's a good fit. But otherwise, I just think it's kind of problematic to just be like, all right, I'm going to niche in this area. Okay, now it's the time to talk about your deepest, darkest fears. Are you ready?
Let's do it. I'm stoked.
Let's go. Spending time and money creating a service that no one wanted. Tell me about failure number one.
Okay, so this one I'm far enough away that now it's kind of funny and very obvious to me. But it wasn't so obvious when I was in the middle of it. So here's the scene. I left my job at the agency. This was between leaving the agency, but before starting Tory Creative. I had gone all in on my freelance business. And I was part of this coaching program that encouraged us to come up with a service that could net us $10,000 in a week, which was a pretty lofty goal. The idea was just like forcing people in the coaching program to kind of like come up with innovative services to make money. At the time, I'd seen a lot of other designers and developers offering these kind of service in a day type of things. So design in a day, website in a day, whatever. And so I was like, great, I'll do that too. So I created a service called Website in a Day. I was charging $4,800 US. And the idea was that I would build somebody a website in one day and do all the content, do all the design, do all the development in one day. I was so invested in this service and so deep in it that I ended up spending a ton of time. I created a landing page. I hired somebody to write content for me for that landing page. So I paid money to somebody else to do that. And I tapped a bunch of friends in my network to help me promote it. And I got zero response. I got nothing at all. Nobody. I went really hard in promotion for a week. Nobody. All I got out of that was a credit card bill for the amount that I paid this brilliant content writer to write content for me. And it took me a couple months to pay off that credit card bill. And I was feeling pretty bad after that. I felt like, especially being in this position where I was new to being freelancing full time, I was like, I'm never going to make it. This isn't going to happen.
Why did you jump straight to the website in a day service as a freelancer? Because that strikes me as quite a bold move from like full-time employment to I'm freelancing, bang, straight to quite a high ticket offer for something that's like also incredibly hard to do in my head.
Yeah, I agree. I would not do that today. I think it was a little bit of being overly optimistic about my skills and the time that it would take to do something like that. It was kind of in this position where I felt like if I could just put in a lot of effort and just find the one or two people that would want that service, I could make the money that I needed for that month. And so I was really, really focused on the money that I needed to make and not on the service that I needed to create for my ideal client. And that led me to like creating the service that like wasn't something that anybody wanted or needed. I realized that my clients, especially my clients that are in nonprofits, they're not going to pay more money to have something faster. That's not what they need. They will pay more money to have somebody who understands their organization and who understands their needs really deeply and can like say things better than they can and pull out their like deepest desires and help them show it to the world, but they're not going to pay a premium for speed. So it wasn't what they needed. I could see a use case for that service in other industries that do like really want that speed, but it just wasn't for my people.
That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. This focusing on the outcome and not so much the process that I think is like a bit of a trap that I think a lot of us in the Webflow space, especially where people are talking about like just signed a 30 grand client or whatever it is, and it's like Well, that's great. Now you got to do the work. Now you got to outsource to different people, different specialists, because a 30 grand project is probably going to need a lot of custom integrations or API calls. And like, do you have that kind of skill set in your arsenal? There's taxes. Like, this 30 grand project is going to be like a 6-month project, or it's going to be a lot longer than like a 1-month project or whatever. So it's kind of like, I think, yeah, it's this kind of fixation on the money or the 30 grand or the 4,500 in a day. It's like, whoa, what's that hourly rate? Oh my God, you are killing it. And it's like, well, yeah, that all sounds great. That sounds amazing. But if we just focus on the process and actually just do some like napkin math and just be like, okay, actually, like, we need to do this, and if this goes well, we need to do this part really, really well. If this part goes well, then we can move on to this part. But let's actually like focus on just doing the basics well in terms of the process. I mean, I don't know. I'm maybe giving advice for you, which is not fair at all. What advice would you give to someone that maybe has, a get rich quick scheme type idea that they're exploring in their agency or freelancer service? Or how would you kind of look back at Tory at that time and just be like, listen, we need to have a chat? What would you say?
Yeah. So I wish that I had taken steps to validate this idea before I invested all of this like time and money into creating this service. Something that's interesting that happened a couple weeks later was I had an idea for another service. And instead of spending all this like time and money to come up with the service, I literally wrote it out in a Google Doc. I posted one story on Instagram and 3 people bought it in the same day. So I validated that idea much more quickly than I had my previous idea, and was able to find out that it was much more in alignment with like the people kind of in my network and their needs. And so if like maybe your get rich quick scheme is a get rich quick scheme, maybe you will get rich from it. I don't know. Nobody can tell the future, but like you got to validate that idea first. And just saying, oh, is this something you would buy, isn't necessarily the way to do that. Like people will say they'll buy something from you all day long because they love you. You got to like actually put something in front of people with as little effort as possible, and find out if like they're actually going to give you their credit card and pay for that service. So just try to validate your ideas with low effort as quickly as possible, and like get to those failure points much more quickly than you would if you like came up with this whole scheme and spent all this time creating it and money creating it, and then it doesn't work out, and then that kind of sucks.
This reminds me of a book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries.
Yep.
This, I feel like, is basically the premise of the book, where it's like you might spend a year, coming up with, all sorts of kind of highfalutin ideas about all the different possible ways that this could go and how this product is going to go from here to here. I mean, it's more like a product focused book maybe, but I think the same kind of rules apply for freelancers that are like, let's just test this idea, let's sell a template, or, I've got all these assets. Maybe if I put them in a bundle and just like put a landing page up, maybe that will be of interest to my audience without me necessarily thinking that they would be that interested. So I think that's a really, really strong idea. And I'm not trying to say that get rich quick schemes are, a complete waste of time. I just think oftentimes we kind of fixate on this triangle of like, cheap to do, like well done, or clients might do this. They want it cheap, quick, and what's the third one?
I think it's well done, or like
well done, cheap
crafted.
And quick. Yeah, that's what it is. And that's not that realistic. And just like get rich quick schemes, sometimes it's like, let's just do the basics well, and then you'll, get paid the value that you're providing. Having said that, it sounds like you got rich quick with a small test. You've bought a Lamborghini.
Ticket offer.
You've now bought a Lamborghini. You're sitting in your second home.
Oh yeah, can't you tell?
Hey, for anyone that's not watching the video of this podcast, you are in a cupboard? No, I'm joking.
It does look like, it looks like we're both hiding in a closet or something.
I am in a bin right now. No, I promise I'm not. I'm just in some weird underground room in the co-working space I'm in. Okay, I feel like we've nailed this point though. Don't spend time and money creating a service that no one wants, and make sure that you understand the value you provide, because that's probably what you'll get paid for. If you uniquely have experience in a particular industry, maybe that is like something that you have unique value in. And like, you said, Tory, that if your audience, i.e. people that are in the social and environmental space, like charities and, people in that network, they are not going to pay a premium for fast, but they will pay a premium for depth of knowledge and good judgment. And so, yeah, it sounds like you realized that lesson early on, which is great because, now you're doing an agency that has got loads of clients in that particular space. Tell me about failure number 2, giving a freelancer the wrong job for them.
Yeah. So this was an interesting one. As Doorway has started to grow, there's too much work for Trinity and I to do on our own. And the vision was always to bring other people into this work. We really want to create an agency where the burden is shared among multiple people. We have lots of people with like expertise that are really great at their jobs and feel really fulfilled doing their work on our team. And so we've started to bring in freelancers, and this is really new to us. I've managed teams before, but not quite in this way where it's like I am responsible for everything about that person in this work. And so we had a project where it was like a 2-month long or so project. This was pretty big, and it was with a new client that we had never done work before. I hired a freelancer to do work for that, and I didn't do a great job. Like, they're a great designer, they're great at their work, but I didn't do a great job of like figuring out the kind of work that they really like and are really good at. I was just like, oh, you're great at your job, you'll be great at all of this stuff, which, now that I'm saying out loud doesn't make any sense. But then, we're in the middle of running an agency and I'm moving really quickly, and I'm just not being as intentional as I could be. So I gave them this project, and it turns out they were struggling like really, really hard with it. And we didn't have the sort of working relationship built up yet where they felt like they could, talk about it. They felt like they're in this freelancer role and they have to just hold it down on their own, since we're the client. They didn't want to, tell their client that they're having a hard time. They just felt like they needed to hold it down. It turns out, we get to 3 days before the project is due, and they're like, I can't finish this. I can't do this anymore. And it sucked pretty bad. We had to do a little bit of scrambling to get the work done. Everything ultimately worked out fine between us and the client. Client loved the work. They had no idea anything happened. It was okay. But the thing that really stuck with me is like, I felt so terrible that this, person that I was really excited to work with, when they let me know that they needed to end the project, they told me that they felt like they didn't understand what they were doing and that they were like, it just wasn't right for them. And I felt so bad that I put somebody in that position. I could have, done my due diligence to like spend more time with them, figure out what the right thing was for them, and make sure I'm giving them a project that's well suited for them. And instead, I just was moving too quickly and it wasn't a good fit. And so like, I really felt like that was on me as the agency owner and the person assigning the work to make sure that I'm being very intentional about that. And I missed that step there.
So let's say we've got a young agency owner listening and they're looking to hire a freelancer for a particular project. How should they think about it differently than how you thought about it at the time?
Yeah. So now what we do is when we bring on people, we work on a very small piece of a project with them to start. So for example, we're partnering with this really amazing Webflow developer named Angel, who actually introduced me to the show. And the very first project we did together, she just helped me set up the CMS for the client in Webflow. She just created all the fields, put everything in. And it was an opportunity for us to learn how, what our project management process was, how our communication styles are. It let me get a feel for how she works, and she's incredible. So after that project, I was like, here, take all the work. But it was a great way for us to just sort of make sure it was a good fit and that we were doing the right things before we committed to this very large, very long project. And so now we're doing that with everybody. We brought in another design freelancer, and she just worked with us on a 1-pager that had a pretty flexible deadline versus a very large document for a client.
Okay, that sounds really good advice. So essentially, you're not just giving them the whole project and being like, you've got great work, good luck. You're saying, okay, we're going to do it a little bit. We're going to see how we communicate as much as we're going to see how good the work is and what the quality of the work is, and see if you're a good fit to then obviously take on more work. But that sounds like a really good strategy to kind of gauge whether someone is right to actually give more and more responsibility, because otherwise it gets insanely stressful. You give someone work, then you're doing the work alongside them and they're unhappy because you're kind of muscling in, but you're just actually just trying to get the work done because it's not getting done. And then, people get unhappy and the client's like, what's this? Who did the work? Who do I talk to? It's like a bit of a mess. So
yeah, it gets messy and it's totally avoidable by it's really hard, when you're first meeting somebody through the interview process and just looking at work to know like how they work. It's hard for them to know how you work too. It's a huge risk for a freelancer to start working with an agency. They're committing their time to a new group of people and a new group of clients they've never worked for. And just everybody is taking a risk in that scenario. And so it benefits everybody just to kind of like take things a little bit more slowly and make sure it's a good fit before putting everybody in this position where like things could potentially go bad.
Take them on a date first.
Yeah. Exactly. Buy them dinner.
Buy them dinner, or just go to dinner, see who offers to buy the dinner. Are you going to
who pulls out their checkbook fast?
Yeah, like that's a very simple thing, but just what kind of personality type do they have? How are they going to communicate? Is it fun going on a date with them? I keep using this date analogy, but actually, let's talk about Webflow. Is it fun working with them? Do they put GIFs in Slack? Because that's a big one for me. I want some GIFs. I want some fire emojis when someone puts some work in the chat because, let's have some positive energy and work culture. But
definitely want to like develop that joy and have that kind of situation where like it feels really fun to work with a person. It makes the work itself better, but also just makes the process of working better. And I think clients can see that outcome too. And you show up on a call and it's like, we're so excited about this work that we all did together because we had a lot of fun while we were doing it. And that helps clients, I think, respond better to projects as well.
We talked a little bit about hiring there and how to hire a freelancer and what your process is there. But from the perspective of you as an agency owner, how can freelancers work really, really well and impress agency owners when they get hired as a contractor?
Yeah, the big thing for us is communication. We have a fairly intense project management process. Deadlines are mapped out very clearly, and we feel very strongly that we stand by those deadlines. We really never miss a deadline with a client. Clients, don't give us something in time. That's a different story. But on our end, we never miss a deadline with a client. And so something that has really stood out with the freelancers that we've worked with that we've loved is their really proactive communication. Like I mentioned Angel earlier, she will just like send me Loom videos in the middle of a week, the middle of working on something, just to give me an update on what's happening. We're working with another freelancer. She's really good at looking at projects when we give them to her and making sure that she has all the information she needs and asking questions early versus like the day the thing is due saying, oh, I don't have access to this, or I need this information or whatever it is. So that has been the most important piece. I've always felt like I can train somebody's skills up. I can help them become a better designer. I can help them become a better developer. It's really hard to train people on communication. So yeah, just having, as a freelancer, having that proactive communication and like think about it from your client's side. As a freelancer, think about it from your client's side. Do you want anybody to ever sit there and think, oh, where is this project at? What's happening with this? Like, I don't ever want our clients to have those kinds of questions. And so we work really hard to communicate in that way with our clients. And I really value having that from the people that we're working with too.
Okay, great advice there. So if anyone's listening to this and they're like, oh yeah, I'm like really good at Webflow, like that's enough. Like, no, actually, it's like people say work speaks for itself. Oftentimes, no, actually, like it's the presentation of the work that's really important. So how does that relate to what we've just talked about? Well, make sure that you're updating on where you're at consistently. What you're struggling with early enough, say that early enough in the process that something can be done if you are struggling, because I think that can be one that's like, on the last day, oh, I didn't get this done because, and this was actually me. I'm speaking on behalf of me as someone that was a freelancer for an agency. I was struggling with the work. I was worried to say I was struggling because I was meant to know how to do the thing. And so I didn't say anything until crunch time where I was like, guys, I haven't been able to do this. Well, that's no help. That is no help to them. So do just speak up early and honestly and say what you're struggling with as candidly as possible, because it's way worse leaving it. Like, have the difficult conversations early as a freelancer is my advice as much as possible, even though it's hard. Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy, but if you're someone that doesn't like communicating or doesn't think of themselves as a good communicator, just over communicate. Just communicate more than you think is necessary, because I bet you that's probably like at least, better than you would have done anyway. Like, send a daily message, have it in your to-do list. set a daily check-in message that you're just going to send on Slack, bullet points of what you've done. That is a zillion times better than just being like, oh yeah, I'm not a very good communicator. It's like, you can work on that. You can work on that.
Definitely.
Sorry, as someone that's like now working with Arnau at Maku, this agency where it's like baby steps. But yeah, freelancers that we've got on really well with have just over communicated, which is the right level of communication for me. Like, too much information? Nah, send it.
Never too much information.
Yeah.
I have never, ever told somebody, hey, can you tune down the amount of information you're sharing with me?
You are sending too many helpful updates right now. Please rein them in. No, send them. Send them. I have been told I send too many voice notes. Voice notes are a little bit annoying because you actually can't. I mean, now Slack has this thing where you can, it shows the transcript, but I was just sending really long voice notes, which actually were kind of annoying. So maybe the format of the communication could be improved. But my point is that I did send messages a lot because I learned that was really important. And you can too as a freelancer. Okay, great. That's really, really helpful advice for both agency owners and freelancers in my head that you just gave. Tell me about failure number 3, business partner communication breakdowns and conflict.
Yeah, this is a spicy one because like these other 2 failures that we've talked about, they're older. I have some distance from them. I have some learnings from those. We're in the middle of this right now. And so it's like a little, it's a little challenging to talk about because I don't really have good answers for this. So essentially what's happening is myself and my business partner, co-founder Triniti, we find ourselves in conflict a lot more often than we used to. We find our communications have a lot more tension in them, and we're both just feeling like it's not fun to work together anymore. And I also have permission from her to talk about this, kind of like side note, something that even though all of this is happening, something that I really love about Triniti is that she's willing to like hold space for that conflict, and we're able to like talk about the conflict that's happening. We don't like shut down from each other. And so that's something that makes us easier to talk about, is because it's not like we're throwing knives at each other from across the room. We're like, we recognize that something is not right at the moment, and we're actively trying to figure out ways to make it better.
Okay, great context for this failure. So can I ask you, I know that this is quite a raw topic and it's hard to talk about, but can I ask you what, in your eyes, you think what the cause of the tension might be?
It's hard because it feels like something that has kind of built up a little bit over time. I think something that we've identified, we have a lot of similarities in our values and in the kind of work we want to do, but something that we've identified as a pretty significant difference is in how we communicate. I'm like a pretty logical, analytical person. I, sort of in my communication, I'll take like a step-by-step approach, like this thing is happening, this thing is happening, this thing is happening. Triniti is a much more like intuitive and feeling kind of person. And so when we have conflict, like those 2 things kind of butt up against each other a little bit. I think she feels, at least what she's voiced to me, is that she feels like I'm very like quick to sort of like have a reason for something that's happening. And it's just sort of like, oh, this is a problem, this is the fix, let's move on. And I kind of like, I think I get a little robotic maybe in conflict. And on my end, I'm kind of feeling like Triniti sort of like has a lot of like feelings about stuff that I don't totally understand how to process. And so we're sort of like mismatched when things happen. And it never, again, something I appreciate about her and something that we have talked about is that like it's never about either one of us. It's not like, I'm a bad person or Triniti's a bad person. And it's not like, I'm wrong, you're right kind of thing. It's just like we're in a really different place and we don't know how to like unify those things and get to the same place.
Okay, really, really helpful context there. So in terms of how this is affecting Doorway Creative then, like obviously there's tension in communication between you both. Does that spill out into the client work that you're doing together, or like how does that kind of play out in your day-to-day?
Another really good question. I don't think clients know at all. We're always still really like cordial with each other and professional. So I don't think clients have any idea that any of this is happening, but it does make sort of like the day-to-day work when we're not on client calls feel like there's a lot of friction to it. and it doesn't feel as joyful as it did at the beginning of our work together. And so that kind of just like puts this cloud over all of the work in general, and it just makes working like feel kind of hard and crunchy and uncomfortable. And then I think, it's kind of like a spiral almost, like, something is hard and then just gets like a little bit harder and then a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And yeah, it's just kind of like self-fulfilling almost.
Oh, wow, that sounds like a very difficult situation to be in. And you guys are physically working in the same place, are you? I mean, you work in a office, or?
We live near each other. We live about 15-20 minutes away from each other, but we both work from home. We meet a couple times a year to do like quarterly planning type of activities. We meet in the same space, but we are separated from each other. And I think that probably is contributing to some of it. It's one thing to like be in a room with somebody or like run down the hallway to be like, hey, you sent this message, I'm confused. Can you like clarify? And it's another thing to like read something on Slack from somebody who's, 20 miles away from you and like have to kind of interpret that. And so I think in some cases being remote probably is playing into that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm just intrigued because, a lot of the communication in Maku Studio is via Slack. And sometimes there's this Key and Peele sketch. I don't know if you know Key and Peele. If there's any like UK listeners that are like American comedy sketch duo. But there's this one sketch that is like keeps coming to mind as you talk, where they're like sending a message to each other being like, hey, do you want to meet? Like, do you want to go to a bar later or something? And this guy's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then the guy receives the message. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever. How dare he? Do you even want to go? And then the guy on the other end's like, do you even want to go? Oh, how considerate. And then but basically there's this back and forth over like WhatsApp, where one of them is completely misinterpreting the intonation of the message. And as a result, the meaning of that message is completely altered from, how that person intended it to be read. And I do think that like, meeting in person can just quell any misinterpretation and that's personally why I really like to send voice notes and Loom videos rather than just send like written messages on Slack, because like if I say fuck off, that's completely different to fuck off, and exactly. I can do that with my voice, whereas obviously, a written message is kind of hard. So that's why I'm asking that question, just to give you some context. I mean, you obviously know each other really well. You worked together previously before starting the agency together. So you maybe had a bit of an inclination as to what her personality type is in terms of like how she communicates, how she maybe is more of like a feelings person than more of like analytically minded, maybe is a better phrase. So you kind of knew that, and you started the agency together, and you guys were both really enjoying it. Well, it sounds like that's from what you've said. So I guess what I'm intrigued about is if your personality types have stayed the same and, work has only got greater and greater, then what do you think has been like the change in terms of like why this is now a problem versus this was a problem 2 years ago when you started the agency?
I actually haven't thought about that question. That is a really good question. If I had to take a stab at it, I think it might have to do with the volume of work that we have. We're having to move a lot more quickly. There's more tension. We have more deadlines. We have more deliverables. There's more moving pieces than there were at the beginning. I think a really big thing that's tied to that we've identified as kind of a core issue is that when we started the agency, Trinity has this really strong marketing and sales background, and that's really what she wanted to be able to do. And I was, the idea was I'm going to be more on the design, development, operational side of things, which is great because that's very in line with like our personalities and how we work. I'm a very process-oriented person. She is great in that kind of like the sort of intuitive feeling aspect that you need to have really good sales and marketing. But because we've had so much work as we're growing, she's fallen into this position, or we've put her in this position where she's doing a lot of project management while I am like doing a lot of the actual projects and or like managing people who are doing the projects. And so I know that she feels like she has talked about feeling like she is having to use her brain in a way that doesn't feel natural to her. And that makes things really challenging for her. And so that is really just a product of how we've grown and how quickly we've grown without having we haven't been able to bring in the right support to help us with the project management. And Trinity is just like falling into that role because that's what needs to be done right now. And so, yeah, I think probably growth is a big piece of that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Because initially you identified the problem as like a difference in how you guys communicate, maybe because you had like, you're more of an analytical thinker and she's more of a feelings thinker. And there seems to be, you were like, there's a bit of a clash. But it strikes me that there might be a clash maybe for different reasons because you weren't clashing before as much. Just like, I'm just a random guy from the internet and I'm not a qualified anything. I'm just saying, I don't know, that strikes me as quite an interesting thing to note in this scenario.
I think that's really spot on. Like earlier on, we were able to kind of be very like kind of this divide and conquer approach in our roles, but really like we haven't set up the structure of the business in order to maintain that approach. There's like the structural issue that is exacerbating some of the like interpersonal problems, and I don't think you're just a random guy from the internet. You also have experience, running your agency as well, and working with other people in that way too. So I'm sure you have a lot of expertise to share.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think just from my perspective on that note, I guess like Arnau and I, so the two of us have basically been trying to build this agency called Maku, although I'm employed by him, like I'm not like a joint owner. But yeah, what we tried to do is like at the start, we tried to set down, what our ideal client was, how we both wanted to work, what kind of lifestyles we both wanted to have. Did those two things align? And we had like really frank conversations about like what success was for us both and stuff. And I think what we've come to realize is that actually, well, my role has kind of been like a salesman for the agency because I talk to people a lot, probably talk a lot more than I should, as has already been identified in this podcast. And I think that doesn't necessarily relate to selling on behalf of the agency for Arnau, as well as like my financial results don't equate to how many people I speak to and how many words I say or like what words I say. I don't think that's necessarily like correlating. So I think maybe I'm kind of Trinity in this scenario. Like we started out with, both thinking, hey, this is all going to be great. And actually like I'm doing a role that I actually don't think I'm very good at or useful for. And as a result, I feel a little bit like, and I'm not doing any creative work as well. And I really miss that. So that's another reason why I'm actually leaving Maku, which I should have said in preface to saying all this stuff. But yeah, so I do resonate with a lot of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I have any right to judge or like try and unpick your particular situation. I can only speak for my particular situation. But I guess I'm trying to ask these questions to try and just explore this stuff, just because I know that a lot of people start an agency with a co-founder and then they split for whatever reason. And maybe this rambling is helpful for anyone that's listening. So I hope you don't feel like I'm kind of trying to tell you what your look, listen here. All right, Tory.
So by the way, I actually called you on this podcast to tell you how to fix your problem.
So you sent me failure number 3 and I thought, bullshit. We are going to talk about this and I'm going to publicly roast you. No, I don't know where that voice came in. Sorry.
I mean, it was great. I loved it.
No, it's
I mean, I think it's like really useful.
Voice.
I'm on Reddit a lot. There's a lot of subreddits. People are talking about problems they're having, and something I see on Reddit and entrepreneur subreddits, and especially the web dev subreddits, are people talking about like having a business partner and a co-founder. There's so many people that are just like, don't do it. And I think the thing that we can identify in our scenarios is like, one, for me, it's worth it to try. And 2, like everybody's experience is going to be really different. Your experience of like coming to this decision to leave your agency is different than our experience. And at least like it kind of comes back to the whole point of your podcast, right? Is like talk about these things publicly so that way people can see different models of how like they might experience something in the world and then learn something from it. I'm sure there's people listening that have experienced the things that both of us have and have like a totally different story about it and a totally different outcome than we'll have. So I know, I just think it's good to talk about a little bit.
Beautiful way to summarize this. Yes. And if anyone does have, agency tensions with their co-founder or whatever, and, feels that any of the stuff that we said resonates, do send a message on Twitter or LinkedIn or Carrier Pigeon, whatever you use, because I think it would be, healthy to talk about more. And we don't need to necessarily like do a podcast about it. If you're
we
like,
can just
yeah,
talk
Jack,
about it whenever you want.
why the hell would I want to come on to a podcast and talk about it with you so that loads of other people can listen? But I do think what you've said, Tori, is really healthy. That it's like, yeah, it is hard to talk about, and it's also really important to talk about as a result, because I'm sure that a lot of people might need to talk about the same stuff if they're talking on Reddit as much as they are about these problems anonymously. It's like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's get it out in the open.
And I think that's why like we're able to like keep doing the work that we're doing and keep Doorway going, is because Trinity and I both like, we talk about conflict when it happens, like it doesn't fester. And we're really good at saying like, hey, like, this is a thing that's going on. I'm uncomfortable with this, or like you said this or whatever. And we're both like, I always feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm like bothered by this, or hearing from her that she's bothered by something. And we can talk about it and sort of like hash a little bit of it out, and then also like go do the work. It doesn't, like, the conflict is affecting how we feel about the work, but it's not affecting the work itself necessarily. And so like when people say like, oh, don't get a partner, I think the key is like, have a partner that is willing to like go through conflict with you and like do their best to work through it. And like, it's a really good growing experience. Like I am really valuing learning to like, manage conflict, learning to de-escalate situations. I think it's a really important skill for all of us to have. And so I don't think it's anything to be like afraid of or shy away from.
Great summary. Yes. It's not don't have a partner, business partner. It's have a partner that's prepared to deal with problems up front and talk about them openly, and not shut them down, because I think that can be a real risk where you feel attacked, so you then go on the attack, or instead you just say, you know what, fuck you, and walk away. It's like,
I'm out, I'm done.
Yeah, well, that's great, nice. Well, we've achieved nothing there. Yeah, but it's hard to hold space for those conversations, and I've only got better at it through talking to people like you every week for the last 2 years, but also having therapy every week for the last 2 years. So, and I'm still bad at it. So good luck to anyone listening. Sorry, that was not...
We're also hiring a business coach who has kind of like a psychology background to help us navigate these things. So like you brought up therapy, and I think that's a huge thing. It's like when you're in conflict, it's really hard sometimes to like settle that conflict on your own. And it is just like immensely useful to have somebody outside of you that can help you navigate that. That's like a third party that is not like part of the stuff that's going on. So I think that would be the big thing that I would encourage anybody to think about, is like find yourself some therapy, find yourself a coach, like find yourself somebody who can like help you deal with those things.
Great way to end that topic. Completely agree. Get a third party professional who can help you unpick stuff, not an idiot like me with a mic. So we have covered a hell of a lot in this episode. I feel emotionally exhausted, like drained, not because of you, just like the topics that we're talking about. I always feel like this after therapy. So that's when I know we've covered some
ground,
deep, important stuff. So that's really healthy. Just to be clear, you are an energy giver, not a drainer, Tori. Just to be very clear, Jack. It's just the topics we talked about have been quite heavy. So to wrap this up, what I want to know is what your next failure is going to be.
Yeah. Also, you have so many great questions on this podcast.
Stop it.
I really, really appreciate this perspective and framing things in this way. I think my next failure is going to be building some like crazy tool. Like I have started to build apps for some of my clients, and I'm really excited to kind of potentially bring some of that into Doorway. And it's a new process, it's a new like skill set, and I'm really excited to like mess some of those things up so I can learn better and build some better things, because our clients like desperately need tools built for them. They don't always fit into like tools that are out there in the world, and so really excited to be able to fail through building some things that they need.
That's an epic answer. Very excited to see what apps you build for clients and then products you build maybe off the back of that. That's really, really cool. Can you give us a taste of anything that's coming down the line potentially?
So see. I guess this is more of an internal thing. We have a subscription service for our clients right now, and we have not found anything that is helping us to manage that service very well. We're just kind of like hacking things together. And I am in the process of sort of imagining what it might look like to build a tool that can help us do that, that can, give our clients visibility into the work that we're doing without being like in our project management system, and that can make things a lot easier. There's a lot of client portal tools out there, but they just aren't fitting the bill for what we need and the level of service we want to give our clients. So hoping to get that built for us.
Ooh la la. Well, I'm excited to hear how that goes. And you have to come back on Webflow in a year's time or so to discuss this next failure. I'm sure it's not going to be a failure. I'm sure you'll be.
I'm sure there will be failures. There will be failures for sure.
Either way, though, you're going to ride through it. You're going to learn from it. It's going to be beautiful. Tory, thank you so much for coming on Webflow and sharing as vulnerably as you have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jack. I really appreciate you doing this work and being out here talking to people about failures. I think it's really important.
Let's go full flat on our face, people. Yay. Okay.